second, or it might be one of the oh, wait a minute. I have a genealogy thing up on one of my screens I was looking at earlier. It's from that reading that Kenneth brought us. Tutmosis, maybe Tutmosis 3, or somewhere in that neighborhood, or maybe it was Hatshepsut.
Yeah, Tutmosis 3 is where I think he come in at.
Cool.
And that helps with my project this week too, because Elephantine also has a lot of material from the time of Tutmosis III.
Cool.
So, yeah. So does anybody but me have a presentation today?
Well, I don't have much of a presentation. I can read a little bit of this out if you run short.
Okay. Let me do a little bit of picture. Let me go over to share. Yeah, Kenneth, it's just down to us.
Well, that's enough.
As I was saying earlier, my project for the week to see if there was a connection between Amenhotep III and Elephantine. I'm kind of fascinated with the whole idea of that island and the Jewish garrison that was there. Of course, there is several hundred years difference. Yet at the same time, I thought if I could find something on there from on Elephantine from Amenhotep III or II, then there might be a connection there. And sure enough, the connection goes clear back to Tutmosis III. But I looked at this crazy little site here. Must be very old because of the way it's built, like something I do, something chintzy and Web 101. So what it tells us here is that there are monuments and inscriptions elsewhere in Egypt. And the very top of this one is a temple on Elephantine. Demolished, actually, I think it was in 1822, they tore it down to use the stones for other buildings. And there were some blocks found at Elephantine also. I couldn't find pictures of those that were actually designated as Amenhotep III, but I did find a picture of this temple as it supposedly was, and it's on this poster advertising a lecture. And so that looks like a pretty classy little temple, if it really was a temple. Probably a place of people getting together to maybe do studies such as this, or to talk about the aspects of their faith. So I went a little further with this one to try to find those ruins and see what was left of them. The lecturer in this is Dr. Danielle Savoldi. I might be able to find that, but it looks like it might be in Arabic. I don't know. It was just last year. And what I found, well, wait a minute. Actually, I lost the picture. What's left of it are some of these columns. And this base is all covered up. Just a few of these columns left. But it seems a shame sometimes how when a new administration comes in, how old monuments are torn down and the materials used for other buildings. This was certainly the case of the Jerusalem temple of Herod. The stones were all taken away in order to build new buildings. In a way, that's sad, but also in a way, you can think of what they considered pagan temples too being torn down because they just didn't fit in with the religious environment anymore. But I went over to Ancient Origins again. I did sign up as a subscriber because this site just has all kinds of stuff on it and always a lot of, I would say, magnificent images. Look at his face. That almost looks like a modern face. I mean, it's nothing like Akhenaten's face. But then again, not all children look like their parents either. And the text, let me read it off quickly. Few pharaohs in ancient Egyptian history could hold a candle to the stupendous achievements of Amenhotep III in various spheres. Everything that this daring king touched turned to gold, be it diplomacy, art, architecture, or geopolitics. The undeniable imprint of Nebma'atre, the praenomen, throne name of the king, was stamped on this glorious age. The still visible extant vestiges of the embarras de richesas of agricultural achievement by this non-peril, where are they coming up with these words? Non-peril, I thought it was a candy that you ate in a movie. Non-peril, sovereign, cause every eye that beholds them to marvel in awe, whatever that means. But yeah, some of them are marvelous. Here's the head. Red granite statue. If you're listening to this on a podcast, I would commend you over to YouTube and look this one up if you're interested in this, because obviously you can't see the illustrations in this little talk. This statue wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, did he not conquer Lower Egypt? No, Upper Egypt from the Nubians? Anyway, it was found in the front of the temple of Khonsupekhered. You're better at these pronunciations than me. In the temple enclosure of Mut at Karnak. However, it is uncertain if it was originally erected there. And we find that in the British Museum. This looks like an asp or a cobra on the headgear. And look, he's smiling. That might be an innovation. I don't recall the other one smiling. The son of the master builder, Pharaoh Thutmose IV, young Amenhotep III, circa 1391 to 1353, was barely 12 years old when he came to the throne and became the 9th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. He was born to Queen Mutemwiya. Sorry, I'm doing so bad on these. One of the chief wives of Thutmose IV. Married as a child, Queen Tiye, 1398 to 1338, Nebma'atre's wife, would be an inseparable and important person in his life. I believe that she may have been probably the most prominent queen as far as art and architecture go than any others. Tiye was not of royal stock, but the daughter of a chariot officer. Remember, Yusuf was a chariot officer, head of the chariots. Her parents were right here, were Yuya and Tiye, and they most probably hailed from Upper Egyptian town of Akhmim. And so we have a bust of the astute and stern matriarch, small green stone head identified as Queen Tiye by her cartouches and distinctive uraei headdress, found by Flinders Petrie in Sinai in 1904. That's a person, I read a little bit of his biography, and he was an incredible person in many ways. And if I'm not mistaken, he snuck into the Great Pyramid and climbed to the top, getting there about sunup. He had a really colorful life. The known monuments of Amenhotep III stretch from the Delta region in the north to as far south as the Third Cataract in Nubia. More often than not, these monuments survive today in fragmentary form due to extensive dismantling and reuse by Amenhotep III's own successors, and due to later further reuse in post-pharaonic constructions. It should be stressed that this fragmentary material often preserves a tremendous amount of information pertinent to otherwise vanished cult centers, and at the very least allows for the identification of a particular monument at a particular site. So says Raymond Johnson, an Egyptian comedian. Look at the color. Fine detail of the inner anthropoid coffin of Yuya shows the skill of ancient Egyptian craftsmen. The vulture goddess Nekhbait, with outspread wings, holds 2 Shen rings in her talons.
Do you know what those signify by any chance?
That's what I was going to ask you. I know you did something on this before.
I don't know that particular answer. There is some speculation in some of these authors' heads that this person, Yuya, was a daughter of Joseph. It's not actually listed in scripture, but a lot of times the daughters weren't as significant and they wouldn't put them in scripture necessarily.
You mean to say the one we thought was male was female?
Well, one of these is, I think that it's either Yuya or Tiye. One of them, I think, is supposedly by, I don't have the book close at hand, was the supposed daughter of Joseph.
I thought that was Queen Tiye. Or
Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just pronounce it different. They spell it different depending on where you look.
Yeah, for sure.
So, the Egyptian symbols, winged sun. It is usually a symbol of royalty, divinity, and power, not only in Egypt, but also in the whole Near East, including the countries of Mesopotamia, Persia, and Anatolia. Now, Egypt, it's a symbol of soul and its eternity. Which make of, is it automobile, uses the Egyptian wing? I know the Nazis used it pretty extensively.
One of the British ones did, I believe. I don't remember.
Oh, I'm
Maybe
thinking
Bentley?
of Firestone tires.
Oh, yes, definitely. Oh, back to that greenstone head you showed in a little bit before this. Look how they said that this person had foreign parentage. Right there, that one.
Yes.
Look at her face. I mean, that's totally different than the previous.
Yes, it is.
Statue.
That face,
narrow nose.
We might say that's almost Semitic.
Exactly where I was going. Look at the cheekbones, the smaller chin, the arched brows, the narrow nose and nostrils that you can even see, even though it's been chipped away. I mean, that's very different. And, this would be the one that was a descendant of Joseph, if that particular line of thought is true.
Well, who's she the wife of? Amenhotep III?
Think so. Yes.
Yeah, Hotep III.
Wow, that face is striking for its reality. Even the eyes aren't overly stated.
Right.
And the nose, lips look so Semitic. So we're thinking that that might be the mother of Akhenaten.
Amenhotep III, yes. If
Yeah,
that's his mom, yes.
the purported mother.
Yes.
Keep that in mind.
Very interesting.
Oh, excuse me. I'm mouse happy here. Assessing the impact of the great royal wife Tiye, both at court and in the personal life of her husband Amenhotep III. Yes, sir. Dr. Nicholas Reeves Avers. Tiye was evidently a dominant force during her husband's reign. Her enhanced status reflected in the fact that her name is consistently incorporated into the full pharaonic titulary, while her appearances in both sculpture and relief are frequent and imposing. True to that observation, we notice that earlier depictions in dyad statuary, dyads, two people, representing, I do know what that word means, representing the pharaoh and his queen showed the king much taller than his wife. This is a symbolic portrayal of the ruler's absolute superiority over everyone. But Amenhotep and Tiye were the power couple of the Egyptian empire and did not shy away from flaunting their effortless equation before the entire world. One thing about doing these little presentations, it helps to, some things are clicking in, locking in. Now, things that Kenneth has said, things that Allison has said, and some things that I've read start locking in, and I'm feeling like I'm getting a more solid idea of the entire time. Well, that's Amenhotep III, and again we have Tiye. And again here in this dyad, we don't have such exaggerated eyes there. It's realistic to a great extent, though it is stylized to some extent as well. But they're close. Is that her arm on his shoulder? Looks like it. A reconstructed dyad statue of King Amenhotep III and his wife Tiye at the Karnak temple complex shows the couple as equals. The commoner queen complemented the monarch's ambitious enterprises and was in many ways the inspiration behind the throne. I imagine that there was some little problem with bringing on a commoner and not somebody in the family line as a wife and a pharaonic wife. But as the previous comment said, they flaunt it. So they make it acceptable. I think of some of our presidents' wives, though we don't have royalty. I guess the closest we got to royalty was the Kennedys. But it brings women, especially women that don't speak much, into great prominence. Like I'm thinking of Mrs. Carter. What was her first name? Roseanne or somebody? Rosalind Carter. She came into prominence, but she didn't use that prominence to really push some agenda, unlike certain other presidents' wives that we know about. To further bolster this claim, American Egyptologists David O'Connor and Eric Klein note, the unprecedented thing about Tiye is not where she came from, but what she became. No previous queen ever figured so prominently in her husband's lifetime. And here we find another spelling of Tiye. That would be pronounced Tiye or T. Regularly appeared besides Amenhotep III in statuary, tomb, and temple reliefs, and stelae, where her name is paired with his on numerous small objects, such as vessels and jewelry, not to mention the large commemorative scarabs, where her name regularly follows his in the date line. Rich in deep colors, the couple's son, Akhenaten, would later grant the same respect to his wife, Nefertiti. Well into the reign of Amenhotep III, new elements were added to Tiye's portraiture, and this included her representation as a sphinx. Iconography, hitherto reserved solely for the pharaoh, to accentuate her role as the monarch's divine and temporal partner. The notable head of the elder Queen Tiye was crafted under the demise of Amenhotep and is proof of her divine status ante mortem. That means before death. Made of yew wood with silver, gold, and glass, not until the advent of the Greeks 1,000 years later did portraiture depict old age with such haggard realism. Oh, don't tell me that. Are these the busts of the aged? Plaster portraits of Akhenaten and Nefertiti from the workshop of Thutmose, the royal sculptor. Taking a leaf out of his father's book, the prominence that this pharaoh gave his great royal wife in art was unprecedented in Egyptian history. This is from Tel El Amarna. Plaster. It's a surprise that these would last so long. Next, Ariel Kozlov and Betsy Bryan provide more insight. They say, this famous image chronicles not only the queen's aging, but also the Baroque and exaggerated realism of the styles promoted at El Amarna by Akhenaten. In a rare, surviving, life-size Grando diorite sculpture fragment of Tiye, she wears a double urias pendant from a modius crown, on top of which are bases of 2 tall feathers with a sun disk in the center. Tiye was the first queen to be depicted in this fashion. Researchers say that the addition of the sun disk to the standard queen's modius and plumes implies an increased solarization of the consort's role. Well, these articles are not dumbed down. Still, they're pretty easy to understand. I was thinking the other day, what's with all this headdress? Some of these headdresses going up, say, 4 or 5 feet in the air. Head of a statuette of Queen Tiye wearing a double feathered crown. This masterpiece is made of yew wood with silver, gold, and glass. It stands testament of her divine status ante mortem. Does this look like the same woman that we saw before?
I think the nose is the same.
I think the lips
and the
are
cheekbones.
too. Mm-hmm. Elsewhere, she was presented as Goddess Maat, the personification of cosmic order, and also Taweret, the hippopotamus deity. I don't think anybody would like to be portrayed as a hippo. Another masterpiece of sculpture is the tiny petite-faced and crowned greenstone head discovered by Sir Flinders Petrie in Sinai in 1904. Is that what we already saw? Greenstone. Amenhotep constructed a temple in Tiye's honor in Sadaiga in northern Sudan, where she was worshipped as a form of Hathor. This temple was the pendant to Amenhotep III's own larger temple at Soleb. In ancient times, Sudenga was known as the fortress of Tiye. Take a look. Oh my. Is this domination? I see a snake there. I see somebody portrayed as a lion that really looks like the Sphinx. And somebody underneath there, underneath. Queen Tiye is depicted in an unusual fashion in the tomb of her steward, Keruef, in tomb 192. In this relief, she is shown as a Sphinx. It's her that is dominating, indicating her domination over the hostile women of the country. This representation was reserved for ruling pharaohs. Queen Tiye was a woman of letters and owned her own library. From extant records, it is evident that she dispensed justice, presided over festivals, corresponded with foreign dignitaries, and steered both domestic and foreign policies. Her continuing influence followed the death of Amenhotep III around 1353 BC in regnal year 39, is evidenced from scenes in the tomb of the steward Keruef, called Senaa. I would think that they were getting on a little farther with Atenism by this time. And the relief here is a site of the famed palace city of Pharaoh Amenhotep III at Melkata on the west bank of Thebes. Though little remains today, the place once boasted chapels, audience halls, parade grounds, villas, lakes, and workshops. A vacationer's paradise. In regnal year 30, Amenhotep III shifted his court to the breathtakingly beautiful mud brick palace city of Melkata, Perhai, the house of rejoicing, on the west bank in Thebes, which was discovered by George Darcy in 1888. The king lent his own special touch and named the vast royal residence the House of Neba'atre as Aten's Splendor. Amenhotep III was addressed by the epithet, dazzling sun disk of all lands. There we see it creeping in. Dated jar labels indicate that the site was occupied primarily from the celebration of Amenhotep's first Jubilee year in the year 30 until his death in 38. What it doesn't say is they found in those jars pickled beets and eggs, which they quickly dispensed with. And then this next piece of art, reconstruction of a section of wall decoration from the temple of Amun at Melkata, comprises faience. Faience? Modern plaster and gold paint tiles. Amenhotep III's reign ushered in innovative artistic styles, including influences from the Near East. Yeah, I guess so.
I think that the faience thing is colored glass.
Faience. So this, they're saying that this is colored glass?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm. The huge estate spread over 80 acres, 33 hectares, including chapels, audience halls, parade grounds, villas, offices, and workshops. The cynosure of all eyes, revealing the fifth commemorative scarab, was the astounding pleasure lake that Amenhotep dug in Queen Tiye's honor in year 11. Quote, the lake was huge, just over a mile long and about a quarter of a mile wide. The king and queen celebrated the opening of the lake by sailing on it in the royal barge named the Aten Gleams, an interesting name in relation to his son Akhenaten's later religious belief, writes Peter Clayton. This is one of the things that Feather says over and over again, that this Atenist religion didn't just pop up. that he suspects that all these Amenhoteps were secret worshipers of one god, and that with the youth of Akhenaten, it just all came out. And here we have remnants of brilliantly colored wall paintings such as this at Malkata Palace. They were brought to light during excavations undertaken by a team of experts from the Institute of Egyptology, Waseda University. I wonder, would you ever want to go and spend a summer doing an archaeological dig? You would?
Yes,
Oh,
I
it'd
would.
be so hot.
That's okay. That's one of the
Dirty.
things. That's one of the things I really wanted to do when I was in high school, was become an archaeologist.
Really?
It didn't work out.
Well, James Tabor, he's taking people to Israel for 3 weeks every spring, and it's coming up again. And Marcille says she thinks she's going again. She says, I just quit my job, so I don't know where I'm going to get any money. But hope springs eternal. We have a list that comprises names and details of Amenhotep III's officers, soldiers, stewards, priests, butlers, court officials, and other dignitaries, some of whom carved sumptuous tombs with gorgeous paintings and reliefs, and had lovely statues of themselves made to herald the wealth of the period. Quote, glass and faience makers were commissioned to produce the deepest blues, elusive rich yellows and reds, and dazzling white, sometimes all on the same object. There are no finer Egyptian faience vessels than those inscribed for Amenhotep III and Tiye. They are the finest glazed ceramics produced anywhere in the world until nearly 2,500 years later in the Yuan dynasty in China. Incredibly beautiful reliefs of the queen and her husband were found in some of the courtier tombs, such as Tomb 47, belonging to Yu Serhet, and Tomb 192 of Kariuf, unquote, reveals Ariel Kozlov. Where do we know that name from? I have been reading something from her this week. Oh, I'm sure of it. Just a coincidence, I guess. And this is a faience vessel with the names Amenhotep and Tiye, exhibits 2 different shades of blue that can be achieved by adding cobalt and copper pigments to faience paste. Vessels bearing royal names could have been given as gifts to worthy subjects or visitors in the court. Is this a reproduction? I don't think, if that's glass, I'm going to look up and see what that means, just for sure. I know you're right.
I think it's like where you grind and cast it, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think you're probably right. Glazed ceramic ware, in particular decorated tin glazed earthenware of the type which includes Delft ware and Meolica. Well, thank you. Conventional name in English for fine tin glazed pottery on a buff earthenware body, at least when there is no more usual English name for the type concerned. So what it sounds like to me, and maybe you can say yay or nay, is they're taking pieces, very small pieces, even dust, making them into a clay, and then shaping them. Here's some more vessels right here. Faience.
It's pretty stuff.
Lots of blue.
Blue was a rare color to be able to produce. And, you know, that's one of the markers in some of the artwork I showed back about 6 or 8 weeks ago was the blue black that they used for the hair of the queens in their paintings. And that's how you knew it was a queen, because it had a special blue color for the paint that wasn't allowed to be used for anyone else.
Maybe that was actually the ceramic dust or something put in the hair. It made it stiff. Look at this. Does this look Egyptian to you? That looks like it came from Mesoamerica. Don't you think?
Well, they have pyramids too, just saying.
Yeah. Okay. A team of experts from the Institute of Egyptology, Waseda University in Tokyo, that had been actively engaged in field work in Egypt from 1966, undertook a comprehensive excavation of Melkata Palace and brought to light a series of wall murals. Painted pavements, ceilings, and inlays. The detail of those who ensured the continued pomp of Amenhotep's rule, such as chief architect and Pharaoh's namesake Amenhotep, son of Hapu, are well attested, and many officials carved sumptuous tombs with gorgeous paintings, relief, and commissioned elegant statues of themselves. Now, I suspect in those days, a relief like this one were painstaking to make and involved ingredients or substances that were hard to get, hard to mix. They're not hard today. I mean, think of what was so difficult at that time is so easily and cheaply made today. And for this particular one, seems what I see here are the heads of cows, cow heads. And what do you suppose the circular part is? Sky?
Looks kind of like a disc.
Yeah.
With rays and, maybe it's
Yes.
a proto-Aten symbol.
Well, yeah, in fact, look now. These rows of things going from one to the other.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we could probably see something like this in the wallpaper of a modern farmhouse. Wooden columns carved and painted to look like palm trees held up the ceiling, and light came through the windows in which were set in intricately carved wooden screens. However, except for the bases of the columns, which were carved of limestone, all the other materials used in the palace construction, wood, mud brick, and mud plaster, deteriorated easily. Now the preservation and recording of the palaces and other structures at the site is a critical priority, reveals Peter Lacovara. Yes, I would think so. After all this time, it's amazing that anything is preserved. As I mentioned before in these ancient origins articles, in the middle of a particular article, you can get easily distracted because there's always from 3 to 9 links here to other things that are related to what you're reading. And they really take a lot of liberty in their titles. So they look very, very interesting, like the musical statues. I was looking at that a little bit. The long-standing guardians of Amenhotep III's temple that found a voice. I think those are on Elephantine too. I think I saw them on one of those image pages I was looking at. A new Egypt discovery could change chronology of the pharaohs and beliefs about Amenhotep III and IV. Now, I would like to just click on that right now. Why not? We're free. Free to click. Free to collect tax stamps. Oh, I think I've read this. This is a new Egypt discovery that could change the chronology. You're into that. A team of Spanish and Egyptian archaeologists have made an unexpected discovery in a southern Egyptian tomb, which could lead to reinterpretation of pharaonic chronology and change our understanding of the pharaohs Amenhotep III and his son Amenhotep IV, aka Akhenaten. The scientists, led by Spanish archaeologist Francisco Martin Valentin, were excavating the remains of a wall and column of the mausoleum of a minister of the 18th dynasty in the province of Luxor when they discovered the names of Amenhotep III and IV carved together. According to Mr. Valentin, the joint inscriptions suggest that they reigned together. Yes, I read this. This is significant because the books we've read, there was no way of knowing whether they were co-regents for like 12 years or something like that, or whether the elder died and Akhenaten took over. So having them both on this inscription suggests that they reigned together. This could confirm that the two pharaohs governed jointly between 9 and 10 years of the 39 that Amenhotep III governed, since the hieroglyphics on the columns explain that they were both sovereigns of Upper and Lower Egypt, said Valentin. There's nothing similar in pharaonic history. So, of course, there's been a long debate among historians and Egyptologists over whether Amenhotep III and the IV shared co-regency toward the end of Amenhotep III's reign. And we have seen this in many of the texts that we've looked at, haven't we? Nobody seems to agree on this, with some experts suggesting a power-sharing arrangement lasting as long as 12 years or as short as 2 years. This has something to do with Bible chronology, too, because in 33 AD, we think that Jesus was 33 years old when he was crucified because of the time of Augustus' death and Tiberius taking over in 14 AD. However, it was found out that they were co-regents for a number of years. And when Tiberius, that old pervert, came on as co-regent, if the Lucan source is dating it to that time, then Jesus would have been 42 years old instead of 33. Then we've got that 20-year gap to deal with. He could have well been over 50. But it is so ingrained in our memory of him being born in 0 AD. Notice I say Jesus. I say Jesus when I'm not sure that the very thought of 42 years or nearing 50, even though the scripture says you're not yet 50 years old, I still have that article someplace. I'll have to look it up. Wow. Classy, matchless, Colossi. Ooh. Amenhotep III was unrivaled in building. Shining examples are the two towering quartzite sandstone colossi that depict the enthroned pharaoh in the first pylon of the temple of millions of years gazing eastward. Now, what does this have to do with Revelation chapter 10? I'll leave that to you. The statues are known today as the Colossi of Memnon, after Memnon, the Trojan war hero, the son of the Eos, Greek goddess of the dawn. The Egyptian monarch desired that these gigantic sculptures on the west bank of the Nile in modern-day Qom el-Hitan should gleam into the people's eyes like the rising Aton. Well, they're still made out, but they're not in very good shape. Now, what does that have to do with Rhodes and Revelation 10? Do you give up? Here's the rear view of the Colossi of Memnon. 65-foot high quartzite sandstone statues. And look at this statuary in relation to the size of these people. They are huge. The colossal limestone group statue of Amenhotep III, Queen Tiye, and their daughters. Amenhotep, the largest and best preserved, in the center. Nebata on the right, and another whose name is destroyed. That last one, I think her name is Debbie. The sculpture rises 7 meters in height, dwarfing all other statues in the central hall of the Egyptian Museum, Cairo. This monolith originated from Medinet Habu in western Thebes. Might be good to do a little bit of a virtual tour of that museum. Now, statues were made for blocks quarried at El Gabal El Hamar, or Red Mountain, near Cairo, and transported 675 kilometers, 420 miles, overland to Thebes. They're too heavy to have been transported upstream on the Nile. The blocks used by later Roman engineers to construct the northern Colossus may have come from Edfu, north of Aswan, including the stone platforms on which they stand, themselves about 4 meters. The Colossi reached a stunning 18 meters in height and weigh an estimated 720 tons. The architect, Amenhotep, son of Hapu, placed the twin statues 15 meters apart, 50 feet, from each other. Some scholars opine that these figures were originally adorned with the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. If true, the actual height would have been closer to 21 meters or 70 feet. Aha! It appears that that headdress was indeed red and partially blue. Is this a cow on this headdress, or is it an asp?
I think it's the cobra. I forget what the other sign for the other kingdom was.
The Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt?
Yeah. I don't remember today. I did the other week.
Mm-hmm. Isn't this interesting that now, looking at the face of this gigantic statue, this Colossus, we can identify this man. It's as though we've known him, and when we see him, we can identify him from his facial features. And he's got a bad zit right there. Yes, he's a child here, and he's wearing the blue crown, or the war crown. This object may have been produced to commemorate one of the King Heb-Sed festivals. The symbolism behind using red color is unknown. I think I want to cut off there and take this up at another time. But I'd like to hear your comments or anything else that you might have to add to the discussion. I'm not a person that really likes art, visual art, unless it's offbeat and strange. But I'm enjoying the art that we have studied here, especially, I guess it was the first or second installment that we had when Allison, you did that art project. I thought, this is really great.
It's beautiful stuff, and I love how it's changing.
Well, you're an artist.
You got on the screen there. Look how realistic.
Yes, very realistic.
Birds or swallows or whatever they are, and the colors. Look at the colors. How can that have lasted long? It's amazing.
It looks like they're doves. Look at the beak on them.
Yeah, that does look like doves.
White doves. Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I raise pigeons. Those are definitely dove heads or pigeon heads.
Well, see, they're all white too, with some kind of variations to white. Well, no, this is blue.
It looks like then if that's a pigeon head, that's kind of like a modern pigeon if he's kind of grayish blue.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of part 1 anyway.
Oh, okay.
So this is a good place to end there.
What I'd read a little bit of in just today's studying was Robert Feather saying, like you said, that the Aten symbol has been all over things that people have discovered from several pharaohs before Akhenaten, and it's just plain as the nose on their face, but they refuse to take it up and identify it as an Aten disc. What
do you mean they failed to take it up?
Well, they see them, but they don't link them to being an Aten disc. No one wants to acknowledge that the theory that it was around for several generations and wasn't fully developed until Akhenaten brought it out.
Sounds pretty familiar with Bible exegetes and archaeologists as well, like the Jesus family tomb. I mean, it's as clear as your nose on your face, but they will not even touch it. Yeah. I've heard that that main Egyptian archaeologist, what's his name, Zias?
I think so.
Zias, very grasping of his reputation and very ingrained. He's on TV a lot, and on YouTube like crazy. But he's a great presenter, and he's always there. Yeah. He's always someplace interesting. But he is so solid in his theories, nothing will change his theories. And he's just, I guess, typical of these guys.
Well, that's in our study of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the people who are interpreting them, there's pretty much an official version of everything. And if you vary from that, you get either kicked out of the clique that has the rights to translate, or you're called an amateur and a fool, like some of the people's interpretations we've read. So, it carries with archaeology as well. There's
consensus. The consensus.
Theory. Mm-hmm. If you buck the consensus theory, you're wrong, even if you might not be.
That's one of the reasons why I believe all these amateurs who have written books, a lot of the ones we've read, including Feathers, I'm sure he self-published that first. All these guys are self-published. Why? Because they're not in with the in crowd. They're not sitting in an office full of books and grading papers. They're not in the university system. But if they were in there, it's a solid job for as long as you don't stir up the waters any.
True.
And that, and that's bad, except today, a person can self-publish literally for free. I think that's a great innovation for so many of these guys' theories that are now coming out, even Osman, that they can publish it and they can get a niche market and people can read their books and theories.
I think it's a good thing. Get more stuff out there and we can, pick through it and try to determine the truth. That's what we're doing or trying to do in this study, although it's going to be hard to nail it down. There's so many theories. But I do think that what you presented tonight with the gradual development of Atenism through several generations of pharaohs is probably the most correct.
And don't you see that in everything we've done?
Well,
Evolution of Atenism?
yeah, and like one of the frames that you had earlier showing Tiye in her headdress, it had that disc in the middle of the headdress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's an Aten disc.
And that's the mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't be wrong. Too much evidence.
And we got King Tut, the successor, there for a while, and he's Tutankhamun, had his changed name to Tutankhamun. I don't think he probably did that himself. I'm sure that they changed it for him being a youth, and then being murdered probably with a hole in his skull.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They wanted to, well, it was all about power, and the priests of the multiple deity sort had all the influence and power around the pharaoh,
Mm-hmm.
and they also had all the treasure and funding, so they did everything they could because this was rocking their boat. When they got an opportunity to take it all back, they went for it. I mean, that's just the way of, unfortunately, the world. But it was for a purpose. You know, it existed long enough for it to be picked up by Moses and the people who followed him, and we still have a version of it. So that's pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah. I think it would be cool for us to, when we finish this, if we ever do, to go through and edit it and put the parts together and have us a nice YouTube movie.
Well, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Or we could get all of our facts together and self-publish yet another.
Yeah,
theory.
that's right. That's what we were talking about.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else? Kenneth, you have anything to add?
No, I got some things I'm gonna work on over the next week or two that I think can add to a lot of stuff we was talking about tonight. And I don't know if you got an email I sent you a while back of 2 pictures of. Anyway, I'd like to present that because
Okay.
to me that's very telling. But,
I'll take a look back, and I know that your ideas about this are very well developed. So we'll look forward to whatever you've got to add when the time comes. And yes, we'll put this together one way or the other. It's good. So let's just keep at it, even if it's just us.
Well,
All
it's
right.
not just us, like you said. You're
Yeah.
putting it out. You're putting it out there. People are hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
People are downloading it. And besides, we might get, you know, something. If we put it all together, we might get something that somebody might enjoy and learn something from in the end.
Well, 5 minutes after these things hit, the downloads begin.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's
just right away. The last one, I even put it up in the just put it up as a podcast, and within just like a day, there were 17 downloads. I mean, that's a lot for me for a day.
Well, that's a lot for such an off-the-wall subject.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you.
Maybe we could interview Robert Feather. He's accessible.
That would be cool.
yeah, that'd be great.
I got his email address someplace. I've talked to him before. We'll give it a try, okay? Thank you guys for showing up and working hard. And let's see, we'll meet again for the service on Shabbat. And then we're going to talk about DACA in the controversial forum. That's really controversial. See you soon. See you at Sukkot.